Very nice to meet everybody. Um, yes, it's interesting to be in front of real people again. So what I wanted to talk about today was translating developed market solutions for the developing world. And this is something that I've had a lot of experience doing over the past 20 years. And I just wanted to kind of go through my critical learnings from that and how that can also be translated here into Korea. So my background is I was one of the founders of Skype, which at the time was the largest exit in Europe, which is amazing to think because it was only a $3 billion exit. But it was based in Sweden and Estonia. So basically, if you put together the population of those two countries, you had 10 million people. So the reality was when we started, we had to look at things and much bigger than our own home markets. And this has a lot to do exactly with what is happening in Korea. After we started Skype, I went on and I was one of the founders of Atomico, which is one of the two biggest venture capital firms in Europe. It has about $4 billion under management. And the focus of that also was this idea of great ideas can come from anywhere. So we spent a lot of time finding great companies that we could take and export that technology to other places. So that's been the whole core thesis of that business. So we had companies like Klarna, which is now the most valued company in Europe. Just raised at a $45 billion valuation. And then you have like Supercell as well, which is a gaming company, Clash of Clans and whatnot, that also had a lot of success, especially in Japan. So the focus was taking these companies and bringing them outside of their home markets. And after that, we founded Oriente in Hong Kong, which is a fintech company focused on Southeast Asia. And we partner with some of the biggest conglomerates in Southeast Asia. And we brought the team from Lufax, which is a $40 billion New York Stock Exchange listed company. And now we're doing the same thing in Brazil with Alicios, where we're bringing the best companies from abroad and importing them into Brazil and making them kind of a local champion there. So this has been my whole entire career is this. And building on what the last presenter was speaking about from Altos, which is a great fund, Korea now is hitting that inflection point the same way that we're seeing in Europe when it comes to Korea. So, Naver and those guys were sort of the, the beginning, the trailblazers like we were at Skype. And now you're seeing a whole new group of companies come in, which we'll get into a bit later. But that's why we think it's very exciting. So for ourselves, we're looking at companies here in Korea that we can partner with to bring to Latin America and make investments in. And in Oriente, the same, bringing great fintech companies and bringing them to partner with us in Southeast Asia. So this is an old picture of me. The first business trip I ever took in Asia was to Korea. It was in 2002 with me and Nicholas. And we were focused on bringing Skype to Korea. We didn't have as much luck here. We had much more luck in China and Japan, but we still saw that, we started to see the green shoots of happening with, again, the likes of NHN at the time, et cetera. So, I've been coming to Korea for a long, long time. And historically, Korea's been very, very good, obviously, at exporting its technology in kind of the hardware sort of sector, obviously. And what we kind of look at now with ourselves is we look at the idea that the digital future has arrived, and we think that Korea will play a big part in that. It's amazing when I started my career, even before Skype, I was an investment banker in San Francisco at Robertson Stevens. And at that time, everything was this or everything was new media. And the reality what's happened, of course, is that new media all of a sudden has become actually become the media. So example like finance, PayPal isn't, fintech so much, it's now as finance. Amazon is not commerce or e-commerce, it's just commerce. So we're seeing this across the board. The thing that we're also seeing is that there's a few sectors that are starting to heat up that have not been disintermediated yet. And that, of course, is healthcare, which is a big one, obviously. And, of course, currencies as well. Those are two big ones. And the last one, of course, is education. So our thesis is focused much more on healthcare, education, and also when we look at the size of companies, it's a lot more long-tail SMEs. That's a big thing. And how leveraging technology for these SMEs to kind of grow their businesses exponentially is a big part of what we're doing across the board. And we're seeing a lot of that. One of Atomico's best investments is a company called MessageBird, for example, and they've done a very good job with that. And we're also, at Oriente, really focusing on that long tail. And we think that's going to be the future. So for us, this is the kind of companies we're looking to partner with at Oriente and also invest in and work with to bring to Brazil with us. So again, we know about all this kind of stuff happening. And that's the one thing that is amazing. What we've seen is that the technology is just getting better and better here. A lot of what's happened in Korea is very analogous to what we've been seeing in Atomico in Europe, which is that a lot of these great companies are coming from Korea and Europe. It used to be that a German company just focused on Germany, and what's happening now is those companies are going abroad. Like TOS is doing things in Vietnam quite well, and Coupang also is looking to expand. So we're seeing a lot of that kind of happening, and our goal is to kind of partner with those companies with our two other vehicles, Oriente and with Alicios. Yeah, so the reality is how we kind of look at this and how we want to do this and how we will continue to do this is what we've done with Skype, for example. What we figured out at the beginning was we were going to bring our technology and partner with people who had the regulatory experience, who had the understanding of the market to kind of build joint ventures with. So we did a joint venture in China with Li Kai-shing, with Rakuten in Japan, et cetera. And we built really, really big businesses. By the time we exited Skype, Mandarin was actually the #1 speaking language on the network. It was not actually even English. So we've seen a lot of that happening. We've taken the same approach to Oriente, where we have had 15 million downloads in 2 years. We've done a great job of kind of building that business out as well. And what we did is we took the team from Lufax, brought them over, and we partnered with conglomerates in Southeast Asia to help us regulatory-wise, help us launch our product in their stores, et cetera, and kind of build this out. So we want to take that same model with Korean companies and do the same thing with Oriente and do the same thing in Brazil. So this is kind of our thesis, and the reality is that Korea is really well positioned to do that. Again, if you look at like the way the TOS app works, et cetera, it's really world class. It's not just a Korean thing. So we're seeing a lot of this kind of stuff across the board, and this is what we want to kind of focus on. So this is what we've done with Oriente. Effectively, when we talk about this, when we talk about translating this stuff from the developed markets, developing markets, it's very, very important how you kind of do that and that you make sure that you tailor it for the market. So buy now, pay later is taking off in Southeast Asia, just like it's taken off in Europe and everywhere else. But the reality is that you have to do it a bit different. So for example, when we invested in Klarna, way back when it was sub-billion-dollar valuation, they focused almost purely online for their solution. Then they focused on having deposit-first banking. So the idea was you deposit your money. That was kind of the driving force with a little bit of better savings rates, et cetera. And then they've all gotten a merchant referral. So they become effectively an e-commerce site. Afterpay's done the same thing, et cetera. But when you look at the Philippines, Indonesia, and Vietnam, we've taken that exact same approach, but we've just had to tailor it different. So for example, we have to use cash loans and then offline first, because the reality is that offline is a driver there. People still like going to malls. People still enjoy that kind of approach, and also cash loans, because that's a very basic product that they don't have in their markets. So we've had to focus on getting that part first. And then the second part is, when it comes to interest rates, for example, people in Indonesia and Philippines are not that focused on what is the rate. They're not like focused on getting 6% returns, 8% returns. They can loan money to their friend and get 10% a month. So it's a much different thought process. So what you have to do is start looking at remittances, insurance, loyalty programs, those kind of services. And then what we're doing is we're helping global companies come to Southeast Asia. So we have the same kind of roadmap, but you have to localize it. And that's where kind of our local partners like JG Summit, which 85% of Filipinos buy something from every month as an example, really comes into play, because we've partnered with their offline retailers, we've partnered with their pharmacies, et cetera, to work with them. So this is kind of how we've kind of built out our business, and we think that's the kind of way forward. So again, you can see, like for Southeast Asia, we were talking about this. There's been a lot of activity. SCA is now worth $150 billion, right? It's actually worth more now than SoftBank. and you've seen Grab as well. There's been a lot of this kind of stuff happening here. And again, all these things have been done by tropicalizing how they've done these things. So, for example, if you take Grab and Gojek, they started with two-wheelers because in those markets, it's more important to do it that way. And SEA, with like Shopee and whatnot, they've been very, very good at helping to build out these stores because they don't have logistics things, and payment solutions are much different. So the reality is that they've taken these things, and what they've done is they've kind of made them localized. Our view is going forward that one of the biggest things is not building all this out yourself. It's going to be able to use like an open API architecture and having people plug into your system. That's going to be the most important part. It's not about building everything yourself. It's about bringing some base technology, partnering with the right people, and then building on top of that. So that's kind of our thesis of what's happening in the future. So again, we talked about this before. There's no, like in Southeast Asia, there's no identity engines, no credit bureaus. So you have to build that all yourself. You have to build out for a very fractured ecosystem, and have to deal with the fact that there is a very offline infrastructure. So basically, 81% of things are still, payments are still in cash. So, and 98% of transactions are offline. So again, what we've been focusing on is taking this technology from China, bringing it to Southeast Asia, and then building around that. So that's kind of the partners that we're looking for who have the same kind of approach to this. So this is kind of our focus. So again, this is the same kind of thing. You know, one of the things that happens when we've seen a lot of companies try to come to Southeast Asia and do it by themselves, and they've had a really, really hard time. We've also seen that with like Lazada, when they were bought by Alibaba, they took a very China-centric approach to this. They didn't realize that Southeast Asia is not like China. So for example, again, there's no credit bureaus. There's no way to identify who is who. It's very, very different. The logistics situation in China is much better. Southeast Asia is full of islands, for example, so there's not much of that there. So again, you have to kind of take that approach of leveraging the best from abroad, some of this great technology, and partnering with local people, and that's going to be kind of the future. Just trying to do it yourself is really, really, really going to be difficult. And we've seen JD.com try to do that in Indonesia with e-commerce, and it hasn't worked because the strength of JD.com was all of their fulfillment things and whatnot, and that's just not available in these markets. So it's very, very important to kind of merge these two things together, and we think this is going to be the biggest investment trend over the next 10 years. So again, this also is something that we were just talking about. For us, the important part as we go forward is going to be this long tail stuff. So as we go on, what we do with Oriente is we focus on a lot on the SMEs and the micropreneurs. That's what we're doing. So basically what's happened in these markets is that people aren't even wanting to get websites. All they want to do is they want to close a transaction actually in the app, in WhatsApp, in Viber, and whatnot. So that's a very, very different thing. So what we're doing is we're working with MessageBird to take their technology to Southeast Asia and then allow us to kind of like use our back-end infrastructure and what we have built out to allow them to plug into our system. And that's allowed us to offer these services to people that we couldn't possibly have been able to do without them. The reality is the MessageBird, for example, the product stuff took, well, Mason could tell me, but it would be like 12 weeks to build the whole thing because we're able to use this great technology from Amsterdam, bring it into our market, and then plug it into our system. So we think that's going to be more and more of the ideas, is working kind of cross-pollinating with different companies and utilizing our local knowledge to kind of put it all together. So again, this is the same kind of thing. It's about understanding these kind of basic concepts that are going to be very, very important over the next few years. So again, what we basically did was our background is Hubert was one of the founding CTOs of Lufax, and he was the lead engineer at eBay when we were acquired by them. And then he brought his team from Lufax, and then we hooked up with kind of, again, Lance Gokenway's on our board, the CEO of the second biggest conglomerate in the Philippines, and Jocelyn, who is the director of all their digital ventures for the second biggest conglomerate in Indonesia. And then Mark is our chairman, who was the founder of Mangrove Partners, which is a great early stage venture in Europe. So again, what we're trying to focus on is bringing all these different ingredients together and putting it together and making something that really, really works for these markets. Because again, our view is building from the ground up going forward is not going to be the driver. The driver is going to be taking the best of breed things and using an open API architecture and plugging it in. That's the most important thing for us to be focused on. And again, when we talk about this, what we've been very good at, and the same thing that we have in Brazil, is we have the best kind of local partners to help us. These are all people who have a lot of things on the ground that's been helpful. So Viet Thai, for example, is the biggest food F&B chain in Vietnam. So we plug into their services and offer our payment services and whatnot. And you go across the board, Sinarmas, JG Summit, Berjaya Group, they own all the franchisees for McDonald's, et cetera, in Malaysia. So what we've been trying to do, and we think is the best way to do, is partner with some of these older school kind of conglomerates who really know the market, and then we bring our technical expertise from abroad and kind of merge these together. And we think this is, again, a very good way of getting success. Even if you look at OVO, which is probably the biggest payment company in Indonesia, that started as a joint venture at the beginning between Grab and one of the biggest conglomerates there as well. So again, we're going to see a lot more of this happening, and we're doing the exact same thing in Brazil, which we'll get to in a minute. Yeah, again, this is kind of what we had. This is the infrastructure that we built, purpose-built for our Southeast Asian markets that all this stuff sits upon. So we have this infrastructure here that allows us now to, again, partner with the Wixes of the world, with the MessageBirds of the world, to partner with different large box retailers, et cetera, to kind of bring that technology and what they have to the market. And that's been, been very, very successful for us. This is something I've been doing since the beginning with Skype. We've done it with Atomico, and now we're doing it with Oriente. So now I'm going to move on to Brazil. So Brazil, this is the same kind of idea. What we did with Oriente was for Southeast Asia was a one-off kind of situation. What we've now done is we've started a small fund in Brazil to start with, which we hope will grow, focused on bringing the best technology from abroad and integrating it into Brazil, the same thing. We did the same thing with Skype. We brought Skype to Brazil, set up a joint venture there, and it became one of our top 3 biggest markets. So again, merging the best of kind of global with these local solutions as well. We've also been spending a lot of time with a company which is a unicorn company that's based on telehealth to bring them to Latin America as well to do the same kind of thing, because there's a lot of regulatory issues there, navigating kind of the regulatory stuff and just kind of the hospital networks is really, really difficult. So what we've basically done is we've gone from just doing these things as a one-off. I first started doing these as an operator as one-off. Then we started doing it with Oriente as just as an investor focused just on that on a large level. And now we're kind of productizing this and making this actually a fund for Latin America, and we'll grow that from there over time. But this is the same idea. We're taking these best companies again from abroad and bringing them locally. And this really works especially for companies from places like different countries in Europe and places like Korea, because at some point, especially with great technology, you're going to run into a wall of how big you can get within your market. The TAM becomes quite problematic over time. And that's something that's very, very important for these companies that have great technology, but it's very hard for them to kind of grow. If your business has a very low ARPU, it's going to be very, very hard to kind of just monetize in Southeast, or to monetize just in Korea. Way before I started Skype, I invested in a company that was actually the biggest social network in Sweden, and it had over 60% of the market. But even having 60% of the market, it still wasn't profitable because the ARPU was so low and the market was too small. So this is something that we're going to kind of continue to do in these markets. So again, here's the same group of people that I've worked with. I worked with at Atomico, Geraldo and Carlos, and then Mark Toulouse. We focused on building this out at Atomico and at Skype. And we've done this, before, and we're going to kind of continue to do it here. And then Bianchi is helping me in Korea here as well to help drive this as well. So this is kind of our overall approach to how we're going to do it here. So again, we've been doing this for a long, long time. There's too many pictures of me here. anyway, the point is what we kind of look at is what we want to look at is we want to build, invest, and scale in these kind of businesses. And if you look at kind of what we've been able to do in the past with Skype and whatnot, we think we can do the same thing kind of in Latin America. So this is what I was talking about with this unique dual strategy. So most people in the venture capital world will just invest in a company. Like for us, our idea is to say, okay, we'll invest in a company, but what we want to do then is help you export your technology into new markets. We will invest, we will have our local partner invest, and then hopefully we'll set up some sort of joint venture together in that market to help you scale. So there's skin in the game. They have skin in the game in the local market, in the local company, and they also have scale at the top company, which is important that they are in both parts of that. And I think that that has been very, very successful for us, and we're going to kind of keep on doing that. So again, our idea is what we want to do is localize global winners, and this is what we're kind of really focused on, is trying to find these the most sought after foreign companies to bring into the market. Because when you're dealing with Southeast Asia and Brazil, where they're at in their cycle, a lot of the founders are focused on kind of doing more copycat related stuff. Grab like Uber, this kind of stuff. Even Oriente with like what we're doing with, I don't know why that went forward. Anyway, the reality is that we're trying to kind of do that with bringing those companies here. So again, we've worked with a lot of different companies like Truecaller, Waze, Rovio, bringing to Brazil. This is when we were at Atomico, and these are things that we're going to kind of continue to do as we go forward. So again, these are just kind of testimonials of how we've worked on this. And this really works out that the strategy of importing companies, because what it is that it allows you to kind of, as an entrepreneur, not have to focus all of your energies on that market. You have someone who has skin in the game to make that happen. And in these markets, a lot of the other companies, their technology advantage isn't huge. So because the technology prowess just is not there yet. It will over time, it just hasn't gotten there yet. I mean, when we started Skype, Estonia was basically, all the engineers there were effectively engineers for the big Scandinavian banks. That's all they did. Now you have some of the greatest AI engineers in the world coming from there. But it took 20 years to get there. So our view is that we can take the technological advantage that Korea has built up over the last 20 years, that European companies have built up over the last 20 years, and then we can kind of match that up with these local players and kind of do it like that way. And it's very, very good for the local partner because they're going to get equity in both the bottom company and the top company, and it's going to allow the companies that we work with to have a much better chance of succeeding in the markets when they get there. So again, this is kind of what we've done with Waze, Truecaller, Rovio. We've done with countless other companies, but we think this is the best approach to make this happen. My button's not working. I don't know. It's not working. I don't. Okay, now it's working again. Sorry. Now it's just jumped. I don't know what the problem is. Okay, and again, we've had scale also when we invest in these companies is taking them abroad. So GymPass is a company that was last valued at about $1.5 billion. That's one of Atomic. We were the first investor in it in Brazil, and that's grown quite a bit. And we've helped them kind of scale also internationally. So again, the idea is helping companies move their businesses from, in their market to other markets. This is something that we will continue to kind of focus on. This thing, I don't know what to tell you. Thank you. I'll just go. And again, what we're seeing here is Latin America is really taking off as an investment hub. I mean, if you saw last week, Warren Buffett at Berkshire Hathaway just invested $750 million in Nubank at a $25 billion valuation. So there's a lot of this kind of stuff that's happening, and we're going to continue to see more of that. So we think this is a very good market. But again, what we've seen is that the technology prowess is not quite there yet. We think it will get there over time. but it will take a little bit more time. So this is kind of what we're kind of focused on as this market, and we think it's a very, very good market to be focused on. Mm. Yes, and so for us, when we talk about this, like what we think we have here is unparalleled access, and this is one reason why, you know, when I can travel again, but have been, it's coming back to Korea and spending a lot of time in Europe finding these companies. So this is something that we're really focused on, is finding these companies in Asia and in Europe and in the US and bringing to Southeast Asia. So that's kind of our big focus, is taking that global footprint, pairing it up with our local network. And then for our investors, it's a de-risk investment because they're getting in at the bottom floor on the joint venture. And then on top of that, they're able then to participate in the top company as well. So this is kind of our approach to how we do things. That's it, I think. And then I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Thank you very much. Would you please give a big round of applause to Geoffrey Scott Prentice? Thank you.